Global challenges are defined as any major trend, shock, or development that has the potential for serious global impact. Global challenges cannot be projected by any distinction between them. Examples of global challenges we have a challenge in population, growth, aging, migration, technology, we have computation, enough information, we have data growth, and social networking. Causes. Some of the causes of global challenges are the natural consequences of modern globalization and unrestrained economic growth. Also, they are the result of natural resource management, expansive characters of the current hydrocarbon-based economy. So we talk about now, let's see how we can, some possible solutions for global challenges are taking care of stray animals, sorting our garbages, cleaning air, and while reducing electricity cost, and caring for people's happiness. Thank you.
Hello, I'm called Ngaki Ngomenia Moret from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication. I'm going to talk on sexual orientation. It's a whole lot of concept, but I have compressed it for us to have a grasp of what sexual orientation is all about. Sexual orientation is traditionally defined as including heterosexuality, bisexuality, and homosexuality, while asexuality is considered the fourth category of sexual orientation by some researchers and has been defined as absence of traditional sexual orientation. Now let's look at sexual orientation by American Psychological Association. States that sexual orientation refers to an enduring pattern of emotional, romantic, and sexual attraction to men, women, or both sexes, and that this range of behavior and attraction has been described in various cultures and nations throughout the world. Now let's look at sexual identity and sexual behavior. These are closely related to sexual orientation, but they are distinguished. With sexual identity referring to an individual conception of themselves, behavior referring to actual sexual acts performed by an individual, and orientation referring to fantasies, attachment, and longings. These are the categories.
Hello everyone, my name is Shanji Melvis Koye and I'm going to be talking to you on bias. What is bias? Bias refers to the tendency to lean in a certain direction, either in favor or against a particular thing. For example, in a certain workshop, they might decide to have bias for women, and this can be in two phases. Either the bias is towards women or against women. In this case, having bias towards women, they might decide to employ only women due to some gender reasons. And also, having bias against women, they can decide to employ just men, despite the fact that they have women who are more educated. Basically, three types of bias. We have information bias, selection bias, and confounders. When we talk about information bias, this deals with measurement errors. For example, a particular group of health personnel can be sent to a school, let's just say the University of Goya, to carry out some malaria tests on students in the Faculty of Science. On their arrival, they can take the malaria test only for a particular department, let's just say the microbiologist. This will lead to errors. Okay, talking about selection bias, this deals with a particular group of individuals who are being chosen to take part in a particular study. For example, a professor is being asked to choose a student who is able to obtain a scholarship, and due to this, he might decide to choose only a student from a particular department simply because that was his field. There are three types of confounders: personal confounders, procedural confounders, and operational confounders. Thank you for listening.
Hi guys, I'm called Mary Kwale and I'm here to present on the topic terrorism. Terrorism is derived from a Latin verb called terror, meaning to frighten. What then is terrorism? Terrorism is an unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political or social aim. There are two types of terrorism: the domestic terrorism and the international terrorism. The domestic terrorism involves the kind of terrorism that circulates within a particular country. Why? International terrorism involves more than one country. Causes of terrorism: you have lack of social justice, you have lack of good governance, you have lack of democracy, you have backing of illegitimate regime, you have high distribution of inequality, you have historical experience of violent conflict waging. Consequences of terrorism: you have vengeance, you have satisfied vengeance, you have loss of lives and properties, you have influence of government decisions, legislation, or other critical decisions, you have widespread of fear. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
Hello guys, I'll be talking about human diversity. First of all, what's diversity? Diversity means having a range of people with various racial, ethnic, socio-economic, economic and cultural backgrounds and various lifestyle experience and interests. And now, what is human diversity? Human diversity, also called cultural diversity, addresses the variety of human societies and cultures and examines their similarities and differences. There are many types of human diversity. First, I'll be talking about racial diversity. Racial diversity, it means understanding that each individual is unique and recognizing our individual differences. This can be along the dimensions of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socio-economic status, age, physical abilities, religious belief, political beliefs, and other ideologies. Second, ethnicity diversity. Ethnicity diversity is a grouping of humans based on people who identify with each other on the basis of shared attributes that distinguish them from other groups, such as common set of tradition, ancestry, language, history, society, culture, religion, and social treatment within their residual areas. Linguistic diversity. It is a way to talk about various types of traits, including language, family, grammar, and vocabulary. Linguistic traits that may include vocabulary and grammar. Next, talk about religion diversity. It is a fact that there are significant differences in religious belief and practice. It has always been recognized by people outside the smallest and most isolated communities. Roughly, pluralistic approaches to religious diversity say that within bounds, one religion is as good as any other. Let's talk about cultural diversity, also known as multiculturalism. Is a group of diverse individuals from different cultures or societies. Usually, cultural diversity takes into account language, religion, race, age, and ethnicity. Lastly, I'll be talking about sexual orientation diversity, which refers to all the diversities of sex characteristics, sexual orientations, and gender identities, without the need to specify each of the individual's behavior or characteristics that form his plurality.
Guys, I'm called Nifame Namudo Harmony from the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication, and I'm here to present to you guys on the topic of poverty, but my main focus will be on how poverty can be eradicated due to shortage of time. That's how the words poverty can be eradicated. Poverty is said to exist when people lack the means to satisfy their basic necessity. But before going to how poverty can be eradicated, let's look at some of the causes of poverty. We have poor education, we have limited capacity of the government, we have climate changes, we have lack of infrastructure, we have little or no access to livelihood or jobs, just to name a few. Due to the limit time, I will go directly to how poverty can be eradicated. But firstly, by empowering people living in poverty, by involving them in the development and implementation of plans and programs. This can go a long way to reduce poverty. Another way in which poverty can be eradicated is by providing progressive development social protection system to those who can't support themselves financially. One way in which poverty can be eradicated is by creating and improved access to jobs and income. That's by developing entrepreneurs' talent. To conclude, poverty can also be eradicated by educating and providing properties, that's the basic social necessities like education, health, sanitization, just to name a few.
Good day, I'm Lekanen Dongho Melan and I'll be talking on gender and minority issues. Gender minority is a group whose sexual identity, orientation, or practices differ from the majority of the surrounding society. Now, there is no country in the world where the girls and the women have equal opportunities to the boys and men. Over 130 million girls are not in school, and a girl is married as a child bride every 2 seconds. Now, over 214 million women and teens have no control over their biggest decisions in their lives. In the 1995, world leaders promised to achieve equality for girls and women from the getting of every girl in school and the ending of child marriage. Though they depend on women to have big support as female entrepreneurs, but still women are still looked down on. Thanks for listening to my presentation.
Gender inequality is a social process by which men and women are not treated as equals. The treatment may arise from distinctions regarding biology, psychology, or cultural norms. Causes: racism, one of the causes of gender inequality. It would be impossible to talk about gender inequality without talking about racism. It affects what job women of color are able to get and how much they are paid, as well as how they are viewed by legal and healthcare systems. Gender inequality and racism have been closely linked for a long time. According to Sally Keach, a professor and author, European settlers in Virginia decided what work could be taxed based on the women performing the work. African women's work was labor, so it was taxable, while work performed by English women was domestic. And women of color continues that legacy of discrimination and contributes to gender inequality. Lack of employment equality. Only 6 countries in the world give women the same legal work rights as men. In fact, most economics give women only 1/3 the rights of men. Studies show that if employment became a more even playing field, it has a positive domino effect on other areas prone to gender inequality. Uneven access to education is another cause of gender inequality. Around the world, women still have less access to education than men. 1/4 of young women between 15 to 24 will not finish primary school. That group makes up 58% of the people not completing that basic education. Of all the illiterate people in the world, 2/3 are women. When girls are not educated on the same level as boys, it has effect on their future and the kind of opportunities they will get. Solutions: we should give girls access to education, give women platforms to empower and achieve economic success, end violence and sexual assault against women. Women should be given the opportunity for jobs. Effects of gender inequality. Gender inequality in education directly affects women's growth by lowering the average level of human capital. In addition, growth is indirectly affected through the impact of gender inequality on investment and population growth. Women who want to work have a harder time finding a job than men. The unemployment rate for women exceeds 16%. Let's say no to gender inequality. Thank you.
Good morning, guys. I'm here to talk about cybercrime. Cybercrime is a criminal activity which mostly targets computers or computer devices. These crimes are mostly committed by hackers or cyber criminals. Most of the times, it is being done by an individual or organizations. Some examples of cyber crimes are email and internet fraud, identity fraud, that is where personal information as in your personal data, your bank account, personal information about a person is stolen and used for other purposes. Theft of sales and corporate data, just to name a few. Now we'll move ahead to some ways which we can use to stop or to prevent this cybercrime or this criminal activity. We can prevent this criminal activity by using strong passwords, that is, we use longer passwords and passwords which are not known by many people. We can protect our personal data by going or installing new or latest versions of security operating systems. We can also do this by protecting our e-identity. This e-identity is some form of a computer or a protecting system in a computer which will stop hackers from entering or getting into your personal data. Thank you.
My name is Chemju Ime Ira, and from what she has said, I can have a disadvantage on cybercrime, which is it destroys your profile. Because from the example she said on possessing child pornography, a child whose images has gone spread all over the world will be very frustrated of going outside again. But we have various methods in which we can prevent cybercrime, which is we have firstly password, using strong password, which is a combination of letters, numbers, and special keys. Because that's the mistake that people do often. They just use their date of birth or place of birth as their password, which can be easily tracked by somebody. We also have from your social networking profile. It should be private and not public, so that people should not get easy contact with your profile. And furthermore, we also have how can we prevent your home network by using a VPN, which means virtual private network, so that you can use your Wi-Fi safely. From the impacts of cybercrime, firstly, 311,000 people have been targeted with phishing. My partner Rera explained what is phishing. That is, having a fake email to have somebody's personal information. And secondly, 82,000 people have been a victim of cybercrime. And also, 25,000 people have really lost their money, because what is cybercrime is the aim of having money from people. So people really lost their money. So together, let's fight against cybercrime.
Hello guys, good afternoon. I'm Tumbu Romeo Fosong, and I'm here to present on the stereotype, bias, and prejudice. Now, when we talk of stereotype, it's actually referring to, it's a generalized image you have about groups of people, a group of people, particularly about their underlying physiology and characteristics or personality traits. Now, this is basically you viewing people from past record or based on a particular trait from where they are coming from. Most often, a stereotype can be true and can be completely false. And many a times it is, like, for instance, when I talk of a stereotype, you see, like an example, you will say women are weak. Women are weak. To an extent, you verify, you discover that women are weak, but it's not completely true, because there are many women who are even stronger than men. That is why you now see women in military, women doing stuff that men can do, like drilling and many other hard stuff that men, we thought it was men only for men. So with this, stereotype is you viewing people and classifying them based on a certain underlying trait that had been existing before. And when we talk of bias, okay, as I was saying, now stereotype is different from bias. Many a times we might misunderstand the difference between stereotype and bias. Now with bias, you are simply talking of, with bias you are basically talking of an unreasonable and unfair distortion of a judgment in favor of or against another person. For instance, two people goes into a place, and based on some reasons which are not really reasonable enough, like your tribal person, you tend to favor that person against the other person, even if the other person was more qualified, like for a job interview, for instance. So that is the difference between bias. Like stereotype, you are like just having a threat about this person. You said the fact that this person is coming from this part, the person must be white. Like somebody will say somebody coming from Mutengene, somebody coming from Kumba. Because of the stereotype knowledge you have about Kumba and Mutengene, you obviously say this person is a bad person because there are bad traits coming from that area. But with bias, it's simply disproving or that is being very unreasonable, disproving or rejecting somebody in favor of another, or accepting somebody that is accepting somebody against the normal norms based on personal gains or interest. That is more of bias. You are discriminating, a discriminative attitude towards two persons or two objects. Now back to the process of stereotype. Now with stereotype, you have things like selective attention. With selective attention, we talk of the process of filtering out the multitude of stimuli we receive from our environment in order to reduce the amount to meaningful information we can process. Yeah, that's basically. And the next thing we have appraiser. Talking of the relevant the relevance of the stimuli we processed. And also more to that, we have concept, we have categorization, we have the availability of heuristic, that is judging the frequency of event by instance that readily come to mind or memorable cases. Like for instance, there are many instances where you will see people being accused of certain things of robbery. For instance, something will get missing in an environment and a certain person will be accused. not because the person was caught, but because for the past days or for the past weeks or for the past years, that particular person have been caught severally stealing. So for that reason, when something get missing, they will obviously fetch out that person. They'll obviously point a finger at that person. They'll obviously point a finger at that person. So that's what we actually mean by the availability of heuristic. And we also have attribution. We have, at times, stereotype is processed based on emotions and emotions and attribution. Basically, that is what I have for stereotype, and I made it clear the differences between bias and stereotype. However, stereotype is not a good thing to be encouraged. It should be discouraged. By now, most especially in the academic milieu, many people, especially Africans who happen to be out of the country, they are most often regarded down to simply because they have a prehistoric concept of them not performing well in certain exams. And when they get that feeling and that emotion, they are emotionally breaking. And even if they had the opportunity or the ability of making a good score, the emotional tremor will not allow them to proceed with such an important information, or to write the exams correctly as expected. So most often, stereotypes should be destroyed. Should be discouraged by creating awareness in schools, creating awareness in public offices, and many other activities that can be done in most especially academic area. So that is what I have for stereotype. Thank you very, very much for your time and for your concern, and hope to see you some other time. Stay blessed, and the Lord be with you.
Yeah, good evening, you guys. I'm called Mr. Ekule Benedict. I'm handling human rights and human dignity as what I do in my office. If you hear about human rights, it's a very interesting topic or very interesting something. All of us as human beings, we have our rights, which they can never be violated in the society. And if we talk of human dignity is not the matter of me being in a high positions, me being in a high rank. It does not matter. What matters is all about human right. All of us are born equal. That's why I'm saying that it's not matter, or it does not matter that I'm working in a DO's office or I'm a DO. All of us are the same. All of us are the same. That's why they are saying that human rights are closely related to the notions of human dignity. That both are interconnected. Both are connected in a way that one cannot be understood without the other. If we talk of one cannot be understood without the other, it means that you, as you having a right, your right can never be violated. Even if you are in your office, like we say, human dignity is all about those who are in the high rank, high position, but it does not matter. All of us are the same. All of us are the same. That's why in Article 1, according to Human Declaration and Human Rights Declaration, in Article 1, it says that all of us are born equal. All of us are born equal. So it shouldn't be that you violate someone's right because you are in this position, you are in this rank, you are in this high personality, or you are a high personalities in any community. It means you violate the people's right. Like you say, if your right is being violated, according to what I do in my office, is that if your right is being violated, you are subjected to lay a complaint. That is, you'll be considered as a complainant. You consider as a complainant, you laying a complaint about your rights that is being violated in the society. We have about 30 universal declarations of human rights, which I cannot name them all. If you go there, you know that without a nutshell of this, I will still continue by saying that Let me just go through the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Universal Declaration of Human Rights, according to Article 1, all humans are born free and equal in dignity. In dignity. Remember this word, dignities and rights. Like I earlier said, if you have a dignity, it does not mean you should violate others' rights. If you have a right on something, you have to work on it. So I can continue by saying that suddenly dignity wasn't something that people earn. Like, dignity is not something that you earn. That you'll be in the office, by calling you high names or high personalities in the society, it does not mean that is what you are going to earn. It does not mean that is what you are going to earn, because their class, race, and others, they are all the same. We shouldn't practice racism. We shouldn't practice discrimination according to Article 2, Section 1 says. That is what I'm saying here according to Universal Declarations of Human Rights. It says. Okay, we move forward by saying that the concept of human dignity is the belief that all people hold a special value that is tied solely to their humanity. You have a special value in the society. It shouldn't be that you are not. It should not be that since you're not working in a community or you are not in an office, you don't have any right to say something. Meanwhile, you are on your right by saying the thing. Or you are not afraid of anyone if you air out your mind to the society. Like I said, we have an incident that happened last time that unknown armed men murdered a lady in Moloka. What human rights have to do is that human rights have to go out, carry out investigation how the incident happened, knowing the parents of that lady that was murdered in Moloka. By then, we'll sit down and say and compile the problems or the issues violated and send to the general supervisor of human rights. That is the national human rights. That is the UN. The UN will handle the issue and maybe will criticize Cameroon as violating the right of a human. Like, that type of right is violating a right to life because she was murdered and killed. So that is that as far as human rights and